This crazy update that came out of the weekend, as we saw, this was reported by the New York Times, that Josh Shapiro, that is the governor of Pennsylvania, who was vetted to be the running mate of Kamala Harris in 2024. And he revealed in his book, which is called Where We Keep the Light, that he was asked in this vetting process if he had ever been a double agent for Israel. Now, obviously, the only reason he's asked that is because he is Jewish. He's the sitting governor of a state. But they ask him, have you ever been a double agent? And he responded to the individual who's doing the vetting, that's offensive. Like, you're asking me, I'm the governor of Pennsylvania, if I'm a double agent for Israel. And then they said, well, we have to ask. As if that's, it's a thing that you just have to do. Then they continue. They wouldn't let it go. They said, well, have you ever communicated with an undercover agent of Israel? To which he responds with, if they were undercover, how would I have known? So that's that. But now we have Jeff Balaban joining us, our director of ACLJ Jerusalem,
that's right,
to talk about this. But Logan,
when you think about that, Jeff, I mean, we know one of the things that leaked out when they were deciding on whether Josh Shapiro would be the Democratic vice presidential running mate was, hey, he may just be too Jewish for this position. That is what came up. That is some of the talking points that were happening. They were laughed at a little bit, but what's clear out of his book from himself, that was absolutely true.
Absolutely. They tried to deny it. I mean, this really first came up because CNN speculated that maybe Shapiro couldn't do it just because he had a Jewish name and he was a Jew. And that was enough to make him persona non grata for a candidate for national office. And it looks like that it's even deeper and worse than that. It's not even just pandering to a base. It seems as though the people surrounding the presidential candidate for the Democrats, the people in that campaign, with full knowledge, decided to explore whether someone, just because he's a Jew, some kind of a dual agent for another country. Didn't seem to have the same problem with who ended up being the vice presidential candidate, right? With Walz, who was paid by China dozens of times and went over to China, who was actually an enemy of our country. They didn't seem to have that problem, but he came to this guy because he's a Jew. So Governor Shapiro, they hammered on whether he's a foreign agent, or it's outrageous.
Well, and Jeff, I think as we see what happened in Minnesota last night with protesters storming a house of worship, we've seen attacks on synagogues. We have seen an arson attack on this governor of Pennsylvania because he is Jewish for no other reason. And the fact that the Harris campaign and it's not as if this was like a public polling question, like, do you think that he could be a dual agent, which would be disgusting enough as it is, but this is their private communication with him, vetting him. This is what they think are the questions they're going to inform them whether or not he's the best fit to run with her. First of all, have you ever thought, I'm going to go directly ask someone if you're a double agent and they're going to give me a straight answer. The absurdity of that as it is, but the fact that they're buying a disgusting trope, a disgusting anti-Semitic trope that gets spread everywhere on the worst parts of the internet. That is what the Kamala Harris campaign was. They were willing to go and ask someone, just because they're Jewish, do you have dual loyalty? Are you a double agent? Like it's some James Bond spy movie and he's going to go, oh, you got me.
Yep.
You got me. Double agent for Israel. I can't be your vice president. Maybe they should have spent more time asking real questions about policy and or fraud in your state. How have you handled waste, fraud, and abuse? And they wouldn't have ended up with Tim Walz. But instead, this is where we are.
It ties very much into a cultural moment in the United States that you just talked about in the last segment, which is things seem to be coming apart in ways that are very frightening and very dangerous. And famously, the phrase is that the Jews of any country are the canary in the coal mine. The coal miners will take down a small bird, and if there's some kind of a gas emanating that was dangerous to them, first the bird would die, they'd know to run. That's what that phrase means. And so the idea is that when a country turns against its Jews, it's a sign that the whole country's about to collapse. And that is actually a moment of danger when you have people knowing not much else running in and storming into churches, yelling, and no one's listening. When you have media commentators not understanding the First Amendment and sort of standing by these people protesting. And it's a similar cultural moment. These aren't random people charging into a church. These are well vetted. Probably there were a bunch of lawyers who looked at this, the people on the team reviewing this, asking these questions of a governor, a sitting governor. By the way, you're also not allowed to discriminate against somebody based on religion for public office. That's also a pretty constitutional factor as well. And yet this wasn't street people. These are people in the campaign who are actually asking this question. And it's really much about the cultural moment where someone, just because he's a Jew, listen, I've shared this. I mean, I wear a yarmulke, so people all the time in Washington, not always enemies, sometimes friends, they're not thinking, and they'll talk to me when I go to Washington about my government, my country, or my prime minister. Well, let me tell you something. My government, United States of America. My country, United States of America. And I don't have a prime minister because I've never been anything but an American. I'm a Jew. But this notion that it's pervasive, but you'd think that smart people would know better. The fact the campaign took out after him, you could see that Governor Shapiro is incensed, is infuriated. He included it here, and he's right to be infuriated, and we are right to be concerned that this is what's happening in America in 2026.
Yeah, we see the rise of really hateful anti-Semitism, both on the left, but now we're seeing it on the right as well. And unfortunately, you could say it's kind of in the shadows of the right, but it is moving in a direction that is, we've called it out a number of times before, but Jeff, it goes back to the dual loyalty issue that has always been an anti-Semitic trope in the Western world since the foundation of Israel, which is that if you happen to be Jewish, even if you're an American, even if you're the governor of a state being vetted to be vice president of the United States, you've got to be asked these questions because you might not be fully loyal to the United States of America.
Jordan, it's eerie. If you think of when's the first time we see this? When Pharaoh turns against the Jewish people. I mean, Joseph literally saved his country. He literally saved the Egyptians. He was more than the equivalent of the vice president. He ran the country. And yet they turned against their Jews and said, oh, we're suspicious. Maybe they're going to join our enemies. There was no basis for it then. There's no basis for it thousands of years later. But when it happens, it's a terrible sign. And we need to, the only way to fight that, and you're right, Jordan, we have been raising this here on ACLJ. The only way to fight that is not through anger and resentment and conspiracy theories. It's by returning to what America was meant to be, which is freedom and tolerance and represent and understanding each one of us. Our human rights are inviolable. They're unalienable because they come from God.
Yeah, Jeff, thank you so much for joining us today. I know it wasn't in the plans, and I appreciate you popping on because what was going on with that one specifically is absurd, but obviously what's happening also in Minnesota, as you said, it doesn't feel like America. It feels like we're at this boiling point, this point that's going to break over.
A nightclub having to put out a statement apologizing to the city with the third largest Jewish population because they played a song called Heil Hitler with Nick Fuentes and Andrew Tate this weekend.
Yeah, in attendance. I mean, this is where we're headed here.
A huge nightclub in Miami.
And this is what I'm saying. There's got to be this big change that has to happen. I don't know how we get there, but I want to see it, and I'm going to pray for it. I'm going to promote it as much as we can because this can't be what we're living in every day.